Hi guys, it's Danny. Okay, so today we're going to discuss about orchids, pot and media maintenance, if you want. We'll discuss about the problem of actually flushing up salt build-ups. We will talk about what salt build-ups are, why they form in orchid pots, and why it's good to flush out the pots from time to time. And also, I will touch base a little bit on organic fertilizers as well towards the end. Like the name suggests, the salt build-ups are actually an exaggerated accumulation of salts. Now, where do they come from? Well, most of them will come from orchid fertilizers. Typical orchid fertilizers are made up of salts diluted in water. Water evaporates, however, salts do not evaporate, so they will accumulate in orchid media, on the orchid pot, and even on the orchid roots themselves. And I have a little example here. I don't actually have a pot which has accumulations because I flush them regularly, but I have something to show you. This is a little dish that I use for some of my orchids sometimes, and because of the fertilizer, some salt remains appear on the dish, and you can actually scratch them. But these are the salt deposits that I'm talking about. These can actually form inside the orchid pot, in the media, on the orchid roots, and so on. So this is practically what we're talking about when we say salt build-ups and salt accumulation in the orchid pot. Now, why do orchid fertilizers contain salts? Well, in order for plants to actually be able to absorb nutrients like nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus, they cannot really absorb the chemical substance itself. Now, I have to tell you, I am not a chemist, but I will try to make this discussion go as much as my knowledge goes. So for an orchid to be able to absorb nitrogen, let's say, this nitrogen needs to be in a specific formulation that can be absorbed by plants in general. One of these formulas widely used in fertilizers is the nitrate nitrogen. Hopefully you can see here. Nitrate is actually a salt. Now, besides nitrogen, a fertilizer can contain trace elements. Some of them are salts as well, like magnesium and calcium. When they are diluted in water, an orchid can absorb these salts, but when they dry off, the orchid cannot absorb them. Thus, a salt buildup occurs. Now, orchids in general will not absorb all the nutrients you are providing. They will only pick up as much as they need. Whatever is left behind will only deposit as salts. For this reason, it is recommended and it is a good idea to flush out the pots with clear water, no fertilizer, just to dissolve and actually remove those salt buildups. A proper flushing of the salt buildups, in my opinion, is a good soak of the orchid pot. To do this, we need to get ourselves a container that does not have holes, like a decorative pot. Place the orchid pot inside, fill it with water, leave it there for about 5 to 10 minutes, then pick up the orchid and remove all the water. It is actually recommended to do this at least once a month. Some people like to do it every other watering. It is really up to you, but at least once a month it is a good idea to use only clear water and to give a proper soak or flush to your orchid pot. Now, if you want to be super proper about this, you can actually use distilled water, which has no mineral content. But if you don't have distilled water, I can assure you that medium hard water will work as well. So if your tap water is medium hard, it's not hard water, you can actually use it to flush out everything. Of course, in time, the salts will build up and they will not be able to properly dissolve no matter how much you soak the orchid. This is one of the reasons why we actually repot orchids every 2 years or so. Now, the media plays a role as well. Usually, the more porous the media is, the more salts it will accumulate. Medias like sphagnum moss, which retain a lot of water and actually act as a sponge, will retain more salts usually than bark media. But in time, both of these medias will accumulate salts because we continuously fertilize orchids or we use tap water, which is not free of salts. So this is pretty much a maintenance process that we all need to keep in mind, and practically we all do it for the benefit of our orchid. Salt buildups can actually burn roots, orchid roots, because they are not adapted to absorb a lot of nutrients. Fertilizer burn may appear as burned root tips or burnt roots, and sometimes, and on some orchids, burned or dried leaf tips. These are the main symptoms that fertilizer burn can create, so it is indeed a good idea at least once a month to soak and flush the orchid pot properly. Now, the two fertilizers that I showed you are, let's say, chemical fertilizers, although I really don't like this because all these elements, even if you find them in nature, they're still chemical elements. So let's say they are not biofertilizers. Now with biofertilizers, there is a little difference. A viewer of mine has asked me if he needs to flush out the pot if he uses biofertilizers or organic fertilizers, however you want to call them. Now, I have never used organic fertilizers, so I'm not really sure what they contain. I have never read a label. But what I can tell you is that if your organic fertilizer contains nitrate or added calcium or magnesium, it will have salts as well, so it is a good idea to flush the pot. All you need to do is look on the label and see what your organic fertilizer exactly contains. But if your organic fertilizer does not contain any of these chemical substances, let's call them like that, let's say it is seaweed or something like that, there is another problem with this one. As the name suggests, biofertilizers or organic fertilizers contain organic compounds. Some organic compounds cannot be absorbed by plants as they are, and they will need to go through a process that we call nitrification process, like in the case of nitrogen. Now, this is my own opinion here, but I believe that orchids and plants in general actually can absorb this nitrogen better in the form of either nitrate, either ammonia, specifically for orchids. I am not really sure that urea can be absorbed very well about the orchids. And again, this is just my opinion. In any case, organic fertilizers need to go through a conversion process. And I'll give you an example. Urea needs to be broken down to be transformed into ammonia, and from ammonia to nitrate, and from nitrate to nitrate to be able to be absorbed. Unfortunately, in our orchid pots, this process is very hindered. Any media that is not soily cannot be a good environment for nitrifying bacteria. Also, because our medias are not constantly drenching moist, these bacteria are again hindered, so their whole process is actually hindered. The good news is decomposition will happen no matter what. It is the most widely spread phenomena out there. So your media and your biodegradable fertilizer will decompose. The problem is that I really doubt nitrification is possible in your orchid pot. And this is dangerous because some compounds of the nitrification process are actually toxic, like nitrate, and also build-ups of ammonia. Now, for this reason, even if you are using an organic fertilizer, it is still a good idea to flush out the pot to remove the organic buildup actually. Just like excess salts, excess organic material is not okay in an orchid pot simply because we cannot replicate nature perfectly in our home. And this is a truth we all need to accept, unfortunately. If we cannot make sure that all the steps of decomposition are met in order for the pot to not be toxic, then we're gonna have ourselves a little catastrophe on our hands. So better play it safe. No matter what type of fertilizer you are using, flush this pot once a month. It will not harm the orchid in any way, so why not? It can only do good for the orchid. Now, if any of you guys out there are actually chemists or biologists, please feel free to join the discussion and add your opinion and your knowledge to our knowledge, and maybe we can actually learn more about our orchids and so on. But basically, this is why we all talk about flushing the pot, removing salt buildups, removing fertilizer buildups, no matter what type of fertilizer you are using, and so on. So I hope you found this interesting and useful. If you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe. Also, we have an orchid giveaway running right now, so if you want to enter, just visit the link right here. Also, please feel free to leave me questions and suggestions in the comment section below, and you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'll see you next time. Bye!